From today, we start to learn the meditation on the breath. The source of our knowledge on the meditation on the breath is the Anapana Sutra and also the Satipatthana Sutta, the Senyen Chu Jing. These two scriptures, they are the main source of our knowledge of this meditation. And they are explained in a different way in a northern tradition and in southern tradition. The southern tradition emphasizes the more or less learning the meditation on the breath to master the shamatha and vipassana. The southern tradition has a tendency to divide between the shamatha and vipassana. Shamatha is not vipassana, vipassana is not shamatha. The peculiarity of the northern tradition is to combine these two approaches to meditation. You will find this tendency actually in all the scriptures of the northern tradition. Even those scriptures which are, strictly speaking, not yet explaining the bodhisattva path, you have this tendency. So, in the morning, I will teach you in accordance with the Anapana Sutra. I will then continue with what we have started yesterday. And in the evening, we will learn this meditation on the base of the text that you have received, which comes from the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, Yichye Shatilun. In the northern tradition, the Yichye Shatilun is, so to say, almost have the similar importance like the path of purification of Buddhaghosa or Visuddhimagga in the southern tradition. It in a way compiles the whole knowledge that we have on meditation. So most of the teachers, actually almost no exception, who teach according to the northern tradition, which emphasizes the path of bodhisattva, they are directly or indirectly referring to this Yichye Shatilun's explanation. So this Yogacara Bhumi Shastra in Chinese tradition is attributed to the Maitreya himself. In the Tibetan tradition, to Asanga, no matter whether we attribute it to Maitreya or Asanga, or if they are to the same person, important is that actually this Yogacara Bhumi Shastra is in a way the base for our understanding of shamatha and vipassana meditation in the northern tradition, while Visuddhimagga is our main source for understanding the practice of shamatha and vipassana in the southern tradition. So we will devote now our time to a brief analysis of the Anapanasati Sutta, and you will have a similar analysis and based on the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. And we will, because in this course we emphasize the northern tradition of meditation on the breath, so we were also pointing out we will point some basic, the basis is more or less the same, and we will also point how this basis is interpreted in a different way in southern tradition and in the northern tradition. So yesterday we started explaining the conditions for meditation. And they are also explained actually in almost all the sutras, agamas, dealing with meditation. So any one of you who has been studying Pali or Sanskrit, you may have learned with Bhikkhu Bodhi, so I will use also a bit Pali. It may be very useful for you. So the practical part on meditation on the breath starts with what we have described yesterday as explanation of the isolation of the body. Isolation of the body means that the meditator starts learning meditation by turning the attention inside the body, not let it go outside. It does not mean we are not aware of what's going on outside, but our mind is concerned with the mental object. Especially the northern tradition emphasizes all objects of meditation. This is also different from the southern tradition. All objects of meditation are mental objects. Only the mind has ability to develop concentration and wisdom. So in a way, all objects arise in the mind. Of course, the eye has no function without the mind. Ear has no function without the mind. But the eye will be a monkey, will be a monkey eye as long as we have not stabilized it in the mental consciousness. What stabilizes the five senses is the mental consciousness. And mental consciousness can perceive the concepts. The concepts is what, in a way, what brings stability to the mind. And the five consciousnesses, they have no, so to say, they cannot perceive the concepts. This is very important to understand. So, in a way, in the northern tradition, all objects of meditation, they are, so to say, concepts. The five aggregates are also the concepts. And all the objects of the shamatha, they are concepts. All objects of the vipassana, in a way, they are also concepts. This is very important to understand. Now, why is it so important to go to the mind? Here we can rely on the Pali Abhidhamma. Pali Abhidhamma explains that the touch of the mind with a mental object is a subtle touch. It compares it to the when you rub two cotton balls, then you will have a very soft touch. So the touch of mind with a mental object is a very subtle touch. And due to this subtle touch, through concentration and wisdom, we can develop a subtle mind. Now, according to the Abhidhamma, the touch of the five senses with the objects is gross. It is compared to two rams fighting with their horns. Now, when we have more experience in meditation, in the deep states of meditation, we will actually feel it. Very important principle in Buddhism in general is that all that we experience through the touch. We have 6 senses and 6 kinds of touch. The 5 senses, they have a gross touch, and the mind has a subtle touch. That's why we have to bring, we learn meditation by bringing the mind inside the body, and we do it by paying attention to the mental touch. The mental touch is the touch with the meditation object. The meditation object is a concept. So how do we experience the breath? We experience the breath through the bodily consciousness. And the bodily consciousness is aware of the qualities of the 4 elements. Hardness, softness, smoothness, roughness, heat, coolness, pushing. These are the qualities that the bodily consciousness is aware of. And when we are aware of the breath, we are aware actually of the pushing sensation. The pushing sensation is a wind. The function of the wind in the body, of the wind element in the body, is supporting and moving. Now, so to say, we are sitting because the wind is supporting us. Which wind? The mind-created wind. Very important to understand. Now, our movements, according to our speech, also happens due to this mind-created wind. And our breath is also, so to say, strictly speaking, mind-created wind. So these objects, speech, movement, and breath, they are very useful for practicing mindfulness. You don't need to have necessarily spiritual powers, supernatural powers. Just by observing how a person is breathing, how he is moving his body, how he is speaking, you can know the state of his mind. Because these things are, so to say, materiality created by the mind. So now the entrance into meditation is a practice of mindfulness. So the best way to go into meditation is to be mindful of the breath, mindful of the movements, and mindful of the speech. This is how we create a stable perception. According to the teachings of the Abhidhamma, the cause of mindfulness is stable perception. When there is stable perception, mindfulness can arise. If the perception is not stable, we know we have a monkey mind. And most of the time, actually, the more we practice, the more we'll be aware we have a monkey mind. And what is the characteristic of the monkey mind? Very important to understand. When we understand the troublesome nature of the monkey mind, we can easily enter into meditation. Unless we get disenchanted with a monkey mind, we will never go deep into meditation. Impossible. So, this is learning meditation is in a way starting with a process of understanding the monkey mind and getting disenchanted from the monkey mind. And what is the nature of the monkey mind? The monkey mind will run after any object that makes impact on the mind. And it will run to that object which makes the most clear impact on the mind. If it is color, it will run to the color. If it is sound, it will run to the sound. If it is smell, it will run to the smell. And because it is connected with unstable perception, unstable perception is connected with unstable feeling. Very important to understand. In Buddhism, perception and feeling or sensation, they are called the citta samskara. They are formations of the mind. Very important to understand. Our mind is formed by what we perceive and what we feel. According to what we perceive and what we feel, we react. And what we perceive and what we feel is to great extent dependent on our attention. So in the northern tradition, especially in Yogacara, Bhumi Shastra, actually the most important aspect of understanding meditation is explanation concerning the attention. How to use attention. How to use attention to master the mind. In Indian tradition, attention is called manasikara. The manasikara literally means making in the mind, making object in the mind. Now we are learning meditation, so we are learning to make the breath in the mind so that we become concentration and we become wisdom. This is our job. This means learning meditation on the mind, on the breath. Very important to understand. And the key to the mind is attention. If there is attention, the mind has a direction. When the mind has direction, it will perceive, it will feel, and it will give rise to all other mental factors which are the content of our thinking. So now why is meditation on the breath so important? Because you will learn in your practice that how you experience the breath is to great extent, actually almost completely dependent on how we make the breath in the mind. when we make it with firm perception, with mindfulness, with stable feeling, with concentration, with determination, then you will experience yourself while you're meditating how the quality of the breath is changing. And the quality of the breath is changing because the quality of the mind is changing. And the quality of the mind is changing because the perception is changing, feelings are changing. And the object is changing. So, in Buddhism, learning Buddhism is learning the dependent origination. We Buddhists believe that what the Buddha has realized under the Bodhi tree is the dependent origination. Having realized the dependent origination, he became Buddha. So also, meditation on the breath is important because you can realize the dependent origination of the breath. You can see how the breath is dependent on the conditioning of the body, conditioning of the mind, and how the breath changes in regard to the changes of this conditioning. When our body is relaxed and has a stable support, as we have explained before, we breathe in a different way. When our body has effort, is not relaxed, we breathe also in a different way. When our sensation is unstable, when we hold to the sensation, grasp for the sensation, we breathe in a different way. When we relax and don't grasp to the sensation, we also breathe in a different way. All this is to be experienced by mindfulness. According to the teachings of the Abhidhamma, the characteristic of mindfulness is that the mind does not wobble, apilapana. Mind does not shake. When we are mindful, the mind becomes stable. Because the mind becomes stable, we do not forget the object of our attention. Yet, very important to understand, the mindfulness does not mean that while we not forgetting the object of our perception, we are not aware of the other objects. On the contrary, we become perfectly aware of them, but the mind remains stable. Why? Because we do not grasp. So according to the teachings of the Abhidhamma, when the mindfulness is there, the wholesome mind will arise. If the mindfulness is not there, the wholesome mind will not arise. And when the wholesome mind arises, there will be detachment, upekha, and there will be clarity and relaxation, prashrabdhi. So this is how mindfulness is integrated into the process of meditation. When we are mindful, the perception becomes stable, the mind remains stable on the object of attention and does not wobble. That means does not go grasping for other objects, yet is completely aware of all the other objects, of all that is going on. So this is a simple way to know we are mindful or not. And we should develop this ability to be mindful all the time. When we become a Buddha, we become mindful all the time. That's why we have no more defilements. Now we are not mindful all the time, so we have defilements. It's as simple as that. And we don't have defilements because the mindfulness is connected with detachment, upeksha, and with prashrabdhi, with clarity and relaxation, with flexibility, with lightness, with all these qualities we need in order to learn meditation. So that's why when we learn meditation, we start by contemplating the isolation of the body. The Buddha explained this in Anapanasati Sutta, Aranya Gatova, Rukhamula Gatova, Sunyagara Gatova. I don't know if you have learned Pali, which means gone. The meditator is gone to the foot of the tree, is gone to an empty house, empty room, is gone to the forest. What does it mean? In order to meditate, we should not pay attention to the outer objects. We should stay in a place where we are not, say, criticizing. Mostly the defiled mind is always a criticizing mind. We don't like this, we like this. So in a suitable surrounding, we then don't pay attention to the outer objects, then we can turn the mind inside. Now, in the Chinese tradition, it is very useful to actually to meditate in a group. But we should be aware, meditating in a group, we are aware of everybody, but we don't pay attention to that. The great meditators, when you read some biographies of the great meditators like Master Taoyuan, who has learned in China, he spent like 6 years in the Tiantai mountain, and he even did not know who is his neighbor. He did not know. It does not mean he was not aware that he is there, but he did not pay attention how what kind of dress he's wearing, how he, what are his eyes like, his face like. He did not pay attention to that. But it does not mean he was not aware that he is there. He was perfectly aware of that. So we go into meditation by turning the mind into the body. And the best means for doing that is the breath. When we have advanced in meditation on the breath, then even while we're speaking, even while we're moving the body, we still keep the attention inside the body. So the mindfulness becomes natural. Only when the power of mindfulness, as Asanga explains in Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, only when the power of mindfulness has ripened, we can speak of shamatha and vipassana. As long as the power of mindfulness has not ripened, there is, strictly speaking, no shamatha, no vipassana. And the power of mindfulness has ripened when we have succeeded in subduing the monkey mind. And the monkey mind is a mind which runs to whatever objects makes impact on the mind. And to avoid the mind running to whatever object makes impact on the mind is to stay with the meditation object. So usually we learn meditation by mastering the meditation object. When we have mastered the meditation object, then the following is that we can turn the mind on itself. This is especially emphasized in the northern tradition. All the secrets of our happiness and of our suffering are coded in the mind itself. So the mind will guide us, provided we have the concentration and the wisdom. It will not guide us if we don't have the concentration and wisdom. And the concentration and wisdom is based on mindfulness. So we should check, investigate. Now you have a wonderful opportunity, nothing to do except meditation actually. We have a little bit maybe of walking meditation, of working meditation, but we should also use it for investigating whether we are mindful or not. If we are mindful, our mind is stable. If we are not mindful, our mind cannot be stable. And when the mind is not stable, suffering will come. By this understanding, we can tame the monkey mind. Without taming the monkey mind, no meditation will come. So, we should contemplate this point, be aware of this, see very clearly. The Abhidhamma commentaries give a very wonderful explanations. On the surface of the drum you have 5 black stones. 5 black stones are what? Our eyes, our ears, our nose, our tongue, and our body. And what is the surface of the drum? It is a mind. Without the mind, the senses cannot function. Now, what happens when we are not mindful? The mind will run to whatever stone has jumped the highest. If the stone of the eye has jumped higher, the mind will run to the eye. If the stone of the ear has jumped higher, it will run to the ear. If the nose, to the nose. If the tongue, to the tongue. If the body, to the body. Sensation, monkey, sensation in the shoulder, sensation in the hip, sensation in the ear. So running, 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 wherever sensation appears, the mind will run there. This is the monkey mind. According to Buddhism, there is no sensation without touch. Because there is touch, there is sensation. And because there is sensation, there is thirst. Without sensation, no thirst. And because there is a thirst, there is clinging. And because there is clinging, we create karma. So how to practice meditation? Understanding that in order to stabilize the mind, we have to stabilize the perceptions and the feelings. If we have not stabilized perceptions and the feelings, we cannot stabilize the mind. Impossible. And when we have stabilized the mind, it will not run after different sensations. It will stay with the meditation object. Now, what is the skillful means for stabilizing our sensations and perceptions with the help of the meditation object? The Buddha explains further. Aranya gatova, ukamula gatova, sunyagara gatova, palankam abhujitva, ujukayam panidhaya. Palankam abhujitva, he has crossed his legs. Why he has crossed his legs? To stabilize the body. So the most stable bodily posture is with the crossed legs. But do not force it. If you force the crossed leg posture, if you sit long time in a pathological posture, what will happen? No good results. So we have to learn the stable bodily posture step by step, using wisdom, not using force. That's why we learn Qigong, we will learn yoga, to learn how to sit stable with the crossed legs. It is a long, long process. It is a science. If we sit with crossed legs in a pathological posture, the result will be the disaster. I have met in my little experience of teaching meditation, I have met people even in Burma with artificial hips who have tried to force themselves into the perfect lotus posture. I myself was also like that in my young days. The result can't be good. So the important is that the we sit in such a way that we support the straight attitude of the spine. It's not so much that we necessarily have to sit in a lotus posture or even in the half lotus posture. Important is that we sit so that our straight attitude of the spine is being naturally supported. So it depends on what? It depends on the touch. Again, the correct. We will learn maybe a little bit about the yoga. It is a whole science, how to manipulate the body so that we naturally stay with a straightened spine. This aspect is very often neglected, especially in the Southern tradition. I have spent many years in Burma. In Burma, you will find old meditators sitting the whole day, but sitting like sacks of potatoes. They must be experiencing terrible pain, but they don't care. But the body still, by sitting in pathological posture, we cannot be healthy, impossible. The body will collapse, but the mind will not collapse. They have very strong mind. Now I have been talking a lot, so I will tell you some story so that you get a bit relaxed. When I was training in Myanmar, in Burma, one day our teacher, Venerable Paok Sayadaw, took us to a place adjacent to Paok, to Mulmain, a place called Mudon, Mudon's township. In Mudon township, there is a famous teacher called Mudon Sayadaw. In Burma, same like in India, they call the teachers according to the place. Mostly nobody knows their name. They just call them. In India, same. In India also they call according to this Baba, that Baba from that place. So this Mudon Sayadaw, he may be now, I don't know if he's still alive. At that time he was like 80 years old. And he actually does not teach much. He only teaches those who come to him to sit and watch the breath. And they sit, as I have said, many of them like the sacks of potato, like this. But they sit for a long time. When they come, he teaches them to sit for 1 hour. If they stay, he says, you have been sitting for 1 hour, try 1.5. You have been sitting 1.5, try 2 hours. You have been sitting 2 hours, try 3. You have been sitting 3 hours, try 4. How many hours you have been sitting? 4. Okay, try 5. This is how he teaches. He's very friendly, all shining with metta, and just encouraging people to sit. Then, what did we do? We asked these participants, now you have been sitting here, have you have any good results? And they say, yes, before I have had some health problems, now I am okay. Before I was depressed, now I'm okay. Even one said, before I had a cancer, sitting and accepting the pain, miraculously, very difficult to believe, the cancer has disappeared. According to Buddhism, we are ignorant about the truth of suffering because we always change the bodily posture. All his teaching was based on this. You will find it in Visuddhimagga also. Because we try to sit without changing the bodily posture, you will see very clearly that actually this body is related to the pain, to the dukkha. The dukkha does not mean just physical pain, it means the unsatisfactory condition. If we have body, we have unsatisfactory condition. Impossible to escape from it. So, according to Buddhism, when we have penetrated the truth of suffering, you will find it also in what Bhikkhu Bodhi has translated, the Samyutta Nikaya, Samyutta Sacha, Sacha Samyutta. You have the Arahat Gavampati saying, I have heard from the mouth of the Buddha himself, when you have penetrated the truth of suffering, automatically you have penetrated the cause of suffering, end of suffering, and the middle path leading to the end of suffering. So the suffering actually does not mean just physical suffering. Suffering means understanding of impermanence. When we understand impermanence, we accept the impermanence. When we accept the impermanence, we can go beyond impermanence. And we can only accept impermanence by practicing mindfulness. So mindfulness is the base for meditation, is a base for becoming concentration, is a base for becoming wisdom. Because without mindfulness, so explained in the Thousand Buddhism, there cannot be detachment. And without detachment, there cannot be concentration, there cannot be wisdom. There cannot be even a significant, wholesome conditioning of the mind. So now, we may talk about it a little more later. We have covered the isolation of the body, which is conditioned for meditation, and the help for isolation of the body is a stable bodily posture. This is explained by crossing the legs and straightening the spine. Ujjukayam panidaya means placing the body straight. How can we place the body straight? By supporting the body so that the spine gets naturally straightened. And this is a secret of asana science. So, when the bodily posture is stabilized, the perception and the feelings become stabilized easily. When the body is not stabilized, the perception and feelings is difficult to stabilize. Please experiment yourself and see very clearly if it is so or not. So when we have a stable feeling, when we have stable perception, what happens? The body does not need to move. Now, those of us who learn meditation, we can learn to sit even on the ground for hours. But the one who does not learn meditation, even sitting on the most comfortable sofa, he is uncomfortable. He will always move from left to right, right to left. So this isolation of the body is best achieved by working on the stable posture of the body. So, Ujjugayam Panidaya, Sato va asasati, sato va pasasati. The next is, we have stabilized our body, we have turned the attention inside. This is a base, same in all traditions, no matter whether we talk of the southern tradition, northern tradition. We go into meditation by sato va asasati, sato va pasasati. He breathes in mindfully, he breathes out mindfully. This is how we go into meditation. And this going into meditation, the first step, this sato va asasati, sato va pasasati, is explained according to commentaries as the process of counting the breath. In Chinese tradition, the whole meditation on the breath is also called, among others, shu si, which means actually counting the breath. So we develop the ability to have stable perception, stable feeling on the breath by counting the breath. This is how we, so to say, enter into meditation. Now we will learn in the evening, on the base of our text, and it is very important to understand, especially when we study the Bodhisattva path, the northern tradition, which emphasizes the Bodhisattva path. Actually, the following steps and the first step in meditation on the breath, the counting, we should not separate strictly. We should understand, very important. I never get tired of emphasizing. We should understand meditation as an organic process. It does not mean you necessarily have to master the counting first in order to do the next step, which is following. You have to master following to do the next step, which is placing. You have to master placing in order to do the next step, which is investigation. You have to master investigation in order to go to the next step, which is turning away. And you cannot divide this turning away from the next step, which is called purity. In Chinese tradition, the meditation on breath has 6 steps. It is called Liu Miao Men. Liu means 6, Miao means wonderful, Men means method. 6 wonderful methods. So, learning meditation on the breath, we are learning the 6 wonderful methods. In the Chinese tradition, they are called wonderful because they all, this is we are going to learn in the evening, they all, no exception, can lead to liberation. Wonderful is all that leads to liberation. And all of these steps, even the counting, can lead to liberation. according to the Chinese tradition. So while counting, you can still be aware of following. While following, you can still be aware of placing. By placing, you can still be aware of investigation. Investigation what? Investigation the 5 aggregates. Investigating 5 aggregates, you can still be aware of turning away. Turning away from what? From impermanence. Detaching from impermanence. And then purity. So these 6 steps, they are actually an organic process. This is the peculiarity of the Northern tradition. You cannot strictly divide them. You have similar idea in the Southern tradition, but it is not so much emphasized. Why? We have to understand. What is the peculiarity of the Bodhisattva path? In the Bodhisattva path, we do not need to realize directly the object of liberation. We should contemplate the object of liberation all the time. And we should be aware that the object of liberation actually contains all the objects. The emptiness or suchness refers to all the objects, because the selflessness refers to all the objects. Impermanence does not refer to all the objects, because nirvana is not impermanent. Suffering does not refer to all the objects, because nirvana is not suffering. But selflessness, emptiness, refers to all the objects. So when we practice the Bodhisattva path, we contemplate one object. And this one object is everywhere, inside, outside. It is a breath. It is the essence of the breath. It is the essence of everything we experience. And in this emptiness, we cannot divide between the beginning and the end. Beginning and the end, they are also one process. So this is the wisdom to apply if we want to practice the Bodhisattva path. This is a wisdom based on bodhicitta. The bodhicitta means the mind which contemplate the body. Which body? The Buddha's body. So it means that what we normally experience actually is an illusion. What the Buddha experiences, that is the truth. And that truth is one. So in the Chinese tradition, they bring this wisdom into the meditation on the breath. We will talk about it. It will become clear on the base of our text, based on Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. But it becomes even more clear in the Tiantai tradition, which speaks most extensively on the meditation on the breath. So we cannot separate beginning from the end, and we cannot separate the end from the beginning. We are, so to say, whether we are aware of it or not, we are from the very beginning, we are in the state of emptiness. And this state of emptiness, very important to understand, is a natural state. Because we don't understand the natural state, therefore we suffer. So the Northern tradition brings this perspective into the meditation on the breath. Of course, it is not easy to absorb, but it is very helpful. Why is it so helpful? Because it prevents us from grasping. When we understand this philosophy, it is easy to disenchant. I am using the language of the bhikkhu body to get disenchanted from grasping. And the process of meditation is, no matter whether shamatha or vipassana, is a kind of disenchantment from grasping. The more we know about meditation, the more we become disenchanted from the grasping. Because we are disenchanted from the grasping, we grasp less and less. And because we grasp less and less, we find more and more contentment. We have talked about it yesterday. Vasubandhu in Abhidharma Kosha explains the condition for meditation as contentment and few desires. And it can only be possible by practicing non-grasping. According to Buddhism, and it is very important to think about it, to contemplate it, we grasp because we have the self. If we have no self, we do not grasp. The object of grasping actually is the self. And according to the philosophy of Northern Buddhism, according to the philosophy of Asanga, due to grasping, our natural mind becomes transformed. Becomes transformed into all kinds of grasping minds. And because we have minds connected with grasping, therefore we are suffering. And because we are suffering, we need Dharma. And in order to absorb Dharma, we need meditation. And in order to meditate, we have to understand meditation. And in order to understand meditation, we have to practice mindfulness. Without mindfulness, we cannot understand meditation. So, Some people study Buddhism in order to criticize Buddhism, but they do not understand mindfulness. Without mindfulness, we cannot understand Buddhism. So, we start meditating by sato va asasati, sato va pasasati, by breathing in mindfully and breathing out mindfully. When we breathe in mindfully and breathe out mindfully, all the steps in meditation are contained in this first step. This is what we will also learn in the evening when we read our text. So this is very deep approach to the meditation on the breath, very deep understanding of this meditation. And it is very complementary to what the Southern tradition has to say. Now, we have explained to master the meditation on the breath. Then in the Northern tradition we have these 6 steps. It's very important to remember them. The first step is called counting. Ganana. For those of you who learn Sanskrit or Pali. So we enter the meditation on the breath usually by the step called counting. You don't need necessarily to count. If you remind yourself, I am breathing in, breathing out, and don't let your mind go anywhere else, it's also counting. In Thailand, in some countries, they even use some mantra, bu, do, counting in, bu, counting out, breathing out, do. Important is the mind has a firm perception of the in-breath and the out-breath. So it will stabilize the feeling. When the feeling is stabilized, the mind can be stabilized. If the feeling is not stabilized, the mind cannot be stabilized. Impossible. Why? The scriptures explain, because what the samsaric mind, what the worldly mind actually differentiates is on the base of sensation, feeling. And it reacts accordingly. We want the pleasant, we don't want the unpleasant, and when there is neither pleasant nor unpleasant, we feel bored or sleepy, deluded, or agitated, because this worldly mind connected with suffering wants to grasp. Because it wants to grasp, it has no contentment. The only way to get contentment is not to grasp. And this is what we want to learn through meditation. No one has ever attained contentment without learning not to grasp. And this is very difficult to explain. Most of us will not believe it. Because in our time we are all motivated by grasping. But not to grasp does not mean that we have to go into the forest, as the Buddha is advising. In a way, it is even more wonderful to learn not to grasp in societies that we live in. This is what the northern tradition appreciates the most. To live in the society like living in the forest. Same. And this is also what the Buddha praises the most, even in the agamas. And the meditation on the breath is the best, in a way, for realizing that. Because the breath is what always accompanies us. It's always there. We do not need to search. And it's always there, reflecting the conditioning of our body and the mind. Because it is based, as we will learn in the evening, in the body and the mind. When we have developed through the practice of mindfulness a stable perception, stable feeling of the breath, then whenever we get agitated in daily life, in our daily experience, we remember the breath and the mind will cool down automatically. So this is how this meditation on the breath starts benefiting us. So it means now we are about to end this Dharma talk. So what is to be learned? Even though we are doing all kinds of things, we doing the walking, we doing eating, we doing all kinds of activities, we are resting, we can still be aware of the breath. It does not mean that we concentrate on the breath. Please don't think that to be aware of the breath, we have to concentrate on the breath. No. We concentrate on what we are doing, but we're still aware of the breath. Then we will understand more and more how intimately is our breath connected with the acts of our body and of our mind and of our speech. Then we start to live mindfully. When we live mindfully, our feelings will be stabilized. When our feelings are stabilized, the mind will be stabilized. When the mind is stabilized, everything is stabilized. So this is the great advantage of continuous practice. According to the scriptures, we can only succeed in this meditation when we practice continually, satatam, wu jian, and with devotion, sakrityam, yin zhong, wu jian yin zhong. And how do we practice continually and with devotion? By having faith in that it is really useful for us, that it is really helpful for us in order to become contented. And the contentment, according to Buddha's teachings, is the paramalabha, is the highest attainment. It is much higher attainment, then getting a good job, then getting a good whatever we wish for. And it is very difficult to be convinced that it is really so. We have to meditate to be convinced that it is really so. Why? Because when we meditate, we have explained, using the language of Bhikkhu Bodhi, we become disenchanted with grasping. If we don't meditate, it's very difficult to become disenchanted with grasping. And according to Buddhism, what we grasp is actually ourself. When we grasp ourself, we grasp the things connected with the self. When we see the self in us, we see the self in others. When we see the self in us and the self in others, we are bound to the self, and inside and outside. And because we are bound, we cannot be contented. And because we are not contented, our feeling will not be stable. Our perceptions will not be stable. So there is a lot to learn, and we will continue practicing and learning in the afternoon after having a lunch. So the first step I have mentioned is counting. And the counting means being experiencing the breath mindfully. Now we will learn in the evening experiencing the breath mindfully. In the Theravada tradition means only experiencing the in-breath and out-breath. In the northern tradition, it also contains the stage when we have finished the breathing in, and before we breathe out, and when we have completed the process of breathing out, before we start breathing in. We will talk about it more later. But now, for the beginning, just we train to experience the in-breath and out-breath mindfully. This will bring us smoothly to all the other stages that we're going to explain. Okay, that much for now.